They tortured her for days. No food, no water, no name. And when she still wouldn't break, they tied a sack over her head, drove her into the middle of the desert, and left her there to die. No radio, no footprints, no mercy. Because in their minds, this was the worst kind of death a soldier could face. But what they didn't know was simple. She didn't need hope. She didn't need help. She just needed one more breath and a single glint of light in the sky. Because hours later, sunburned, half-conscious, and still crawling, she caught the attention of a SEAL helicopter. And what happened next wasn't a rescue, it was a return. Now, before we show you how she turned a slow death sentence into a mission of revenge, hit that subscribe button, tap the bell icon, and drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. Because this story didn't end in the sand. It ended in fire, and she lit the fuse herself. The truck didn't stop. It slammed to a halt. Tires bit into sand and dust came pouring through the hood they'd tied over her head. Hands grabbed her from both sides. Rough, practiced like they'd done this before. She didn't fight back. Couldn't. Her wrists were zip-tied behind her back, ankles swollen from 3 days of being shackled. Until 5 minutes ago, there'd been tape over her mouth. Now it was just fabric, blood, and that suffocating desert heat, even at night. Drop the American. It wasn't a question. Wasn't even an order. Just a fact. They didn't know her name. Hell, they didn't know much of anything except that she was important. Important enough to keep alive for 72 hours of questions. Important enough to beat half to death when she wouldn't talk. But when the dislocated shoulder didn't break her, when the wire and the bucket of ice water didn't work, they went with something older, something slower. They dragged her maybe 10 feet from the truck. Hot wind hit her face through the fabric, dry, stinking of diesel and iron. Her boots scraped against coarse sand. She knew what this was before they said a word, not a bullet to the head, not some video for the internet, just geography. Death by desert. One of them yanked the sack off her head. She blinked against starlight, trying to focus. No buildings, no roads, no anything. Just rolling dunes and a thin slice of moon hanging over absolutely nothing. She'll be dead by sunrise, one of them laughed, already backing toward the truck. Sunrise hell, another one said. Buzzards'll find her in 3 hours. The truck lurched backward, gears grinding as it fought the sand. She listened to it pull away, counted the seconds between engine sounds. 5, then 15, then just wind, then nothing at all. She was alone. No food, no water, no cavalry coming over the hill, just a dislocated shoulder they'd popped back in wrong, split lip, eye swollen shut, and ribs that had stopped hurting, which worried her more than when they'd been screaming. Her throat felt like she'd been eating sandpaper. Her tongue stuck to the roof of her mouth. Those zip-tied hands dangled in front of her like dead weight. And the real heat hadn't even started yet. But she was breathing. That counted for something. Lieutenant Commander Dana Reyes, Naval Intelligence, 17 years in, 2 tours in Afghanistan, 1 embedded with DevGru, another running shadow operations in Syria that didn't exist on paper. Last anyone knew, she was supposed to be on a routine diplomatic transport to Djibouti. That was 5 days ago. The ambush happened at a checkpoint outside the city. Local police uniforms, friendly waves, smiles just long enough to hide the AKs. Her security team never had a chance. She was the only one they wanted alive. And now she was 40 miles from nowhere. If they'd just shot her, someone might have found the body, might have asked questions. But out here, nobody comes looking for what the buzzards pick clean. She took 1 step and nearly went down. Knees buckled, shoulders screamed, lips cracked with every breath. She dropped to her knees, chest heaving. If this was how it ended, it was going to be a long ending. But it wasn't ending, because as that cold desert wind came howling across the dunes and the night sky shimmered with dust, Dana made fists, or tried to. The zip ties were cutting off circulation, and her fingers had started swelling. But the intention was there. And sometimes intention is all you need to start with. She looked up at that thin moon, dried blood caked on one side of her face, and whispered so quiet even the sand couldn't hear. "Not like this." Her voice was gone. Came out like gravel. But it was a start. The truck was gone. The heat was coming. Her body was broken. But she was still here. And they had no idea who they'd left breathing. Because if they did, they wouldn't have left her breathing at all. She stayed on her knees for maybe 20 minutes, long enough for the dizziness to settle into something manageable. Not gone, just steady. The stars up there made patterns she remembered from survival school at Pensacola, back when this kind of thing was just theory. She tilted her head back and found the Big Dipper. Then she spit blood into the sand and started counting. 1, 2, 3. Deep breath in, slow, save every drop of moisture. 4, 5, 6. Her fingers found the metal tip of her bootlace. Not much, but metal was metal. And metal could cut plastic if you had enough time and nothing else to do. 7, 8, 9. She rolled onto her side and pulled her knees up, keeping that canvas sack pressed against her chest. Rough weave, but it would keep the sun off her neck. Maybe her eyes too, if she could figure out how to tie it right. 10. Her heart was slowing down. Hands still shaking from pain and dehydration and pure rage, but muscle memory was kicking in. Training was a stubborn thing. She worked the little metal aglet under the plastic tie and started sawing. Slow, steady, no wasted energy. Her hands were numb by the time it snapped, but that tiny plastic pop sounded louder than artillery. Freedom, one zip tie at a time. She flexed her fingers. Blood came rushing back with a wave of pins and needles that made her bite her tongue to keep from yelling. But pain meant circulation. Circulation meant time. And time meant she wasn't dead yet. She wrapped the canvas around her head like a scarf and scanned the horizon. Nothing moving anywhere, just dunes rolling into more dunes, and cold wind coming off distant ridges like a furnace somebody had turned backward. That wouldn't last. Sun would be up inside an hour. And when it came, this desert would stop pretending to be cold. She needed cover. There was a dark line at the base of a slope maybe 100 meters away. Not a cave, but some kind of shadow. She started crawling toward it, dragging herself through sand one painful inch at a time. Every 10 meters, she'd stop, breathing through her nose, out through her teeth, counting again. Took her almost an hour to make that crawl. The sun kissed the ridge just as she reached it. Shallow overhang of rock with maybe enough depth to keep the direct heat off her. She collapsed underneath it, heart hammering, lips cracking. Then she started whispering, not prayers, not goodbyes, orders, to herself. Don't sleep, not yet. She tore strips from her shirt with her good hand, wrapping them around the gash on her thigh. The makeshift bandage went dark in seconds. She pressed harder. You've had worse. You'll get water. The hallucinations started before the sun got high. Shapes moving just out of sight. Footsteps that weren't there. Helicopter blades in the wind that never got closer. She saw her mother once, her first commanding officer, the instructor who taught her to navigate with nothing but a broken compass and a book of matches. Then she saw something different, a flicker in the sky, distant but real. Steady, cutting through heat shimmer, rotors, not wind, not her imagination, a bird. She hauled herself upright, every muscle screaming, every joint on fire, eyes watering against the glare, but she kept them open. She needed a signal. That little metal aglet came off her boot again, twisted onto her watch face. Poor man's mirror, primitive as hell, but it worked. She angled it toward the sun and started flashing, left, right, up, down. No flares, no smoke. Just this. If they saw it, maybe she had a chance. If they didn't. The bird was getting closer. She kept flashing. And somewhere between pain and thirst and the kind of desperation that makes you crazy, one thought kept pushing through everything else. They think I'll die here. But they didn't know the first rule they hammered into her in SEER school. Beat into her with cold mud under her fingernails and hypothermia crawling up her spine. Survival isn't about being strong. It's about refusing to die on someone else's timeline. Bird 2, confirm last ping from grid 51 Charlie. We've got heat signature, roughly human-sized, minimal movement, possible exposure victim. Chief Warrant Officer Mason tapped his display twice and squinted through the tinted glass of the MH-60. Below them, desert stretched like broken glass. Every ridge looked like the one before it. Nothing moved except heat. Shimmer. Then he saw it again. A glint. 10 o'clock low, the co-pilot called. Surface reflection. Not natural, not heat distortion. That's metal or glass. Take us down to 100 feet, Mason ordered. The bird dropped fast, rotors chopping through hot air like an industrial saw. In the cabin, 2 SEALs braced against the sudden descent, already checking their gear. Could be bait, one of them muttered. Hajis have used false signals before. Draw us into a kill zone. Not out here, Mason replied. Too far from any known activity. No vehicle tracks, no movement, no radio chatter. This looks like... He trailed off, adjusting his scope. Through the magnification, he could see her now, half buried in a depression between rocks. One arm raised weakly, something metallic in her hand catching the light. Cloth wrapped around her head, no weapon visible, no movement except that slow, desperate signal. Mason's hand went up. Hostile-free environment. Deploy ropes, now. The crew chief yanked the doors open and dropped fast rope lines. Wind whipped across the sand. The helicopter hovered, blasting a dust storm across the landing zone. 2 SEALs hit the ground running, weapons up, sweeping a quick perimeter. She's alive, one shouted over the rotor wash. Breathing, bad shape, might be military. The second one knelt beside her, fingers on her neck. Pulse is weak. Severe dehydration. Gunshot wound to the leg, lacerations on shoulder and face, still conscious. Dana squinted up through the sandstorm as a shape leaned over her. You're safe now, the medic said over the noise. We've got you. Her lips cracked apart. She tried to talk, but only a dry rasp came out. She pointed slowly, shakily toward the south. The medic leaned closer. Coordinates, she croaked. They're still there. He went dead still for half a second. Then he signaled the bird. Get her aboard! Move! The second SEAL slung his rifle and scooped her up in a fireman's carry. She didn't fight it. Couldn't. But her eyes stayed open the whole way up, tracking the ridgeline, refusing to close. They got her inside, the ramp sealed, the bird pulled pitch and climbed. Inside the cabin, the medic slid a needle into her arm, taped the line, started IV fluids, with the kind of calm that came from doing this too many times before. She barely flinched. As oxygen hissed through a mask pressed gently over her face, one of the crew looked over and said under his breath, Jesus, what did they do to her? Doesn't matter, the medic answered. She's alive. But he felt her fingers tighten around his sleeve, eyes cracked open just enough to speak. Don't let them run. And then she finally let herself pass out. Not from weakness. From work that wasn't finished yet. She came to with a needle in her arm and the taste of salt on her lips. Inside, the MH-60 was dim compared to that desert glare, but even behind the oxygen mask, she could make out faces, hard, weathered, focused. The SEAL medic beside her never looked away from the IV bag, counting drops, adjusting flow. Easy, he said when he caught her eyes. Still airborne. Vitals are coming back up. You took one hell of a beating out there. Her head rolled slightly. Everything still cost something. How long? She whispered through the mask. Hour to base. You've got a liter of saline in you, working on another. BP was 90 over nothing when we found you. Pulse barely there. That leg wound was going septic. Dana didn't answer right away. Her fingers moved weakly, tugging the mask aside. The medic tried to stop her. You need the oxygen. Coordinates? She whispered, barely audible. He leaned closer. What? Her fingers tapped his forearm in a pattern. 45.29, 76.04, compound's real. Supplies there, intel, maybe more hostages. One of the crew turned from the cockpit. She's giving us coordinates? Sounds like it. The pilot's voice came through internal comms. Get those numbers to me, I'll run them through the satellite overlay. The medic pulled a notepad from his vest and wrote as she whispered, word by painful word. Every digit came out like it was carved from stone. She didn't pause, didn't stop, just gave them the one thing she still had left, the location. When she was done, she slumped back against the stretcher, oxygen mask sliding back over her mouth. She wasn't finished, not even close. The medic opened a trauma kit and started cleaning the wound on her shoulder. She hissed, but didn't pull away. Instead, she reached for the water bottle beside her stretcher. "You need to sip," he warned. "You'll shock your system." But she drank deep, 3 long pulls, eyes squeezed shut before forcing the cap back on. No time for slow. "Doc?" one of the crew said, nodding toward her gear. "She's trying to sit up." Sure enough, her left hand had already found the nearest plate carrier. She pulled it closer, fingers brushing the American flag patch on the shoulder. "You're not going anywhere," the medic said, gently moving it away. "You're in no condition." She locked eyes with him. Not angry, not wild, just clear. "Either strap me in," she whispered, "or get out of my way." Silence fell across the cabin. Nobody moved. The team leader finally looked at her and said, "Name?" "Lieutenant Commander Dana Reyes. Naval Intelligence, Echo 6 clearance." They looked at each other. They knew that name. The medic reset her IV line and nodded. "I'll patch you up. You stay still long enough for that, you can tell us where to go." She made a sound that might have been a laugh, might have been a cough, and leaned back. But not to rest, to study the map they were unfolding in front of her. Because she wasn't dead, she wasn't done. And if they gave her 10 more minutes and another bottle of water, she'd lead the next mission herself. The helicopter touched down hard on a sand-blown landing zone. No lights, no welcome party, just heat, rotor wash, and a cluster of prefab buildings pressed against rocky hills. Forward Operating Base Cassell wasn't built for comfort. It was a temporary wartime nerve center where things move fast, decisions move faster, and nobody asked too many questions about how you got your intel. The ramp dropped. SEALs hit the ground first, weapons ready. A Navy corpsman jogged over from the perimeter, ready to wheel her toward the aid station. But Dana sat up, or tried to. The medic who'd flown with her put a hand on her chest. "You need medical evac. Bagram minimum, maybe Germany. This isn't a place for recovery." She pushed his hand away. "I'm not here to recover." A man in desert camo stepped out from between 2 bunkers. No name tape. Just a subdued trident over his heart, and Lieutenant Commander bars faded from too many wash cycles. "You're Reyes," he said. "You're running this place." "I am." "Then you need to see this," she said, holding up a bloodstained notepad. "The compound where they held me. They're still there." He stepped closer, reading the coordinates. "You sure about that?" "I gave you satellite coordinates from the bird. Pull the latest drone footage. I'll confirm it." "You're bleeding through your bandages." "Then wrap them tighter." He studied her face. Something passed between them. The look operators gave each other. The one that said, "I've been close to death too, but I wasn't ready to quit either." He turned to his XO. "Get her inside. Field 4, painkillers only if she asks. Pull drone feed for the last 12 hours over those coordinates. And somebody get food. Real food. I think she's going to need it." Dana didn't wait for an escort. She limped forward on her own, grabbing an MRE off a supply crate and tearing it open like she hadn't eaten in a week. Because she hadn't. She ate with one hand and reviewed satellite photos with the other. "Those," she said through a mouthful of field rations, pointing at 3 vehicle-shaped heat signatures. "Weren't there when they dumped me. That means reinforcements." The SEAL XO leaned over her shoulder. "What's inside the compound?" 3 buildings. Main structure looks like modified UN prefab. Interrogation set up in a pit just left of the courtyard, hidden under camo netting. They have power but no external generators, so it's probably buried. 2 guard towers, empty during the day, night watch only, and they get lazy. "You saw all this while you were tied up?" She kept chewing. "They didn't always blindfold me. I counted steps, tracked sun angles. I was there 4 days. The base commander leaned over the planning table. "And you're saying we hit them tonight?" "I'm saying if you don't, they'll be gone by morning." Or worse, they'll grab another hostage before anyone knows they're missing. He didn't answer right away. Didn't need to. She could see it in his eyes, that shift from doubt to purpose. "All right," he said finally. "We'll launch the operation." Dana leaned back, washed down the last of the MRE with lukewarm water, and said, "Then patch me up. I'm not watching this one from the sidelines." The armory at FOB Castle wasn't much. Steel racks, ammunition crates, and the sharp smell of gun oil and sweat. But to Dana Reyes, it looked like Christmas morning. A young armorer handed her a clean M4, already fitted with optics and a forward grip. She ran her fingers along the receiver, nodded once, set it down. Not nostalgia, just muscle memory. Her brain was slower than usual, dulled by blood loss and dehydration, but her hands remembered everything. "Sidearm?" the kid asked. "Glock 19, standard?" He slid one across the table. She checked the magazine, chambered around, holstered it without looking. Behind her, 2 SEALs were loading up plate carriers, stuffing extra batteries into their pouches. One of them glanced over, then did a double take. "You serious?" he muttered to his buddy. "She can barely stand." Dana heard it, didn't look up, but she did slide a trauma kit into her thigh pouch one-handed. The SEAL team leader, same guy who'd met her at the landing zone, stepped between them. His voice was quiet, deliberate. "She gave us the target, crawled out of that desert, and handed us the mission. If she wants in, she's in." Dana looked up at him. "I don't need recognition. I need to see it finished." He nodded once. "You guide us to the compound. After that, I run the breach. You're Overwatch." "Fair enough," she said. "But the guy who ran my interrogation, he's mine." "Understood." Another operator walked over with a fresh comm unit. "You're on encrypted net. Call sign Vulture 6. That work for you?" She clipped it into place. "It works. A map spread across the planning table. Drone imagery updated 30 minutes ago. Red squares marked enemy movement. 4 vehicles, rotating patrols, 2 perimeter watch posts." The team leader pointed with a laser. "We insert by Little Bird, 3 kilometers out. Approach along this dry creek bed. North Tower's unmanned after midnight. We breach from the shadow here." He tapped twice. "And move toward the main building." She pointed with her gloved hand. "There's a blind spot behind the western structure. Cargo containers stacked against a chain link fence. That backs up to the interrogation pit. That's your entry point." A pause settled over the room. Quiet, but heavy. "Rules of engagement?" one of the operators asked. "Take prisoners if they drop their weapons," the team leader replied. "Otherwise," Dana finished for him, "make sure they never do this to anyone else." Nobody argued with that. A junior operator offered her a hydration pack. She strapped it on under her plate carrier, adjusted the drinking tube without help. The last thing she picked up was a field scarf, not for her face, but to reinforce the sling on her injured arm. The bandage was holding barely. She'd tightened it during prep, and now the whole limb throbbed with every heartbeat. But her legs worked. Her aim was solid. Her head was clear. One of the SEALs finally asked what they were all thinking. "Why not sit this one out? Let us handle it from here?" She looked at him, calm and unblinking. "Because I can still hear their boots walking away." That ended the discussion. Outside, 2 MH6 Little Birds waited in the darkness. Rotors already turning slow and quiet. This wasn't going to be a long mission, but it was going to be thorough, and Dana Reyes was going to be there to see every minute of it. The desert at night wasn't cooler, just quieter. The 2 Little Birds skimmed the ridgelines with their navigation lights dark, flying low enough that rotor wash kicked up thin streams of dust along the valley floor. Dana sat by the open door, safety line clipped in, rifle across her lap. Her injured arm was strapped tight to her chest, movement limited, but her eyes were sharp. Ahead, the team leader leaned out and signaled toward the ground. The pilot acknowledged. 2 minutes to LZ, someone said in her headset. Dana looked down and saw it, the dried creek bed winding through the valley like a scar. It would give them concealment right up to the compound's west side, exactly like she remembered. The Little Bird flared and touched down fast. Boots hit sand, weapons up. Everyone moved. She followed, slower but steady, ducking into the creek bed and staying low behind the lead operator. Night vision painted the world cold green, the ridges blurred together. The compound's fence line came into view. Everything exactly where she remembered, except now the blindfold was gone. And she had a rifle. They paused beneath the western ridge, near a stack of rusted shipping containers. Dana knelt beside the team leader and pointed through the fence. "That corner," she whispered. "Concrete structure, covers the pit where they do interrogations. 2 steps down, steel door on the right, no external locks, but sound carries." He nodded, then keyed his radio. "Bravo team in position. Alpha breaching west perimeter in 30 seconds. The operators split up. 2 left, 3 forward. Dana followed Alpha team. One of the SEALs pulled wire cutters from his kit and started slicing through the chain link. Slow, deliberate, close to the ground. No lights, no sound except distant wind and the high-pitched hum in her ears from adrenaline spiking. They slipped through the gap. Ahead, the main building loomed, corrugated metal roof, reinforced walls, floodlights mounted on the corners, but all switched off. Overconfidence, complacency. The first stun grenade went off without warning, tossed through the main door just as Alpha Team stacked up beside it. Crack. Silence, then chaos. Dana watched 2 armed guards stumble out of the entrance and drop before they could shout. Suppressed gunfire. She held her position. Her target was in the pit. She moved fast, boots silent on concrete, one hand pushing the door open, while the other raised her rifle. Inside was dim, cooler. The walls were scarred. Old bloodstains soaked into the floor, a cot against one wall. A generator humming somewhere nearby. And in the center, the man who'd overseen her torture. He looked up, confused at first, then terrified. She aimed center mass. "Don't," said the SEAL behind her. Not an order, a warning. Dana took a breath. The man raised his hands, started babbling in Arabic, then broke in English. "I didn't know. You weren't supposed to." "Shut up," she said coldly. "You left me for the buzzards. Now you answer for it." He stepped back, but there was nowhere to go. The SEAL beside her zip-tied his wrists and shoved him to the floor. "We take him breathing," he said. "Intel says he's connected to 2 other sites. We need what he knows." Dana said nothing, just stared at the man. When he tried to speak again, she turned and walked out. Outside, the compound was secured. 5 hostiles down, 3 captured, no shots fired by the enemy. Clean operation. In the distance, the first edge of dawn touched the horizon, burning orange across the peaks. The team leader walked up beside her, blood on his gloves, dirt on his knees. "You good?" She adjusted the sling across her chest. "Good enough. We got what we came for." She looked back once at the buildings behind them, the place where they thought no one would ever come. "No," she said. "We got more than we came for." By the time the second wave arrived, the sun had cleared the ridgeline completely, casting hard shadows across the compound. Dust hung in the air, spent zip ties littered the ground, body bags lined up near the far wall. Dana stood by the perimeter, face half wrapped in the field scarf she'd used to keep her shoulder from bleeding through again. She hadn't sat down, not once. The compound buzzed with controlled activity now, not panic, but process. 2 SEAL squads moved in careful formations, cataloging evidence, weapon caches, communication equipment, maps, notebooks, hard drives, everything bagged and tagged. Intelligence analysts flown in from another base were questioning the prisoners under field protocols. No names, no locations, just voice scramblers and threat assessment. The man Dana had almost shot sat in a folding chair, hands cuffed behind him, nose bloody from a fall nobody witnessed. Above it all, the sound of incoming Blackhawks grew louder. The SEAL commander stepped beside her, scanning the compound from the same angle. 2 prisoners are giving us operational details on 2 more sites, Syria and eastern Libya. Looks like this cell was part of a bigger network. Contractors? Dana asked. Private military. No official name yet. Probably changes it every 6 months. What we know is they smuggled weapons through compromised UN channels, intercepted aid flights, bought local cooperation with American arms. She said nothing, just stared into the sand. You did more than survive, he added quietly. You brought us a target list. No, she replied. They wrote that list when they drove away and left me to die. He nodded slowly. Your call sign was Vulture 6, right? She tilted her head, ghost of a smile on cracked lips. Still is. Well, Vulture 6. Field's yours. Say the word, we torch this place, or hold it for follow-on operations. What's your call? She didn't hesitate. Burn it. No memorials for cowards. He keyed his radio. Demo team, prepare compound for controlled destruction. Mark the ordnance. Clear the building in 30. Dana stepped back as the SEALs went to work. Behind her, a medic approached with an IV bag and field stretcher. You can sit down now, he said. She looked at him, then at the rising sun. No, still got work to do. He paused, then asked carefully, what kind of work? She looked at the burning edges of the day, this place, this sand, this hell they'd thrown her into. Then she said it, almost too quiet to hear. You don't leave unfinished business in the desert. The Black Hawk thumped overhead. Wind kicked up again. This time, when she climbed aboard, it wasn't as cargo. It was as the reason they'd found the place at all. And as the helicopter lifted off, sand spinning beneath them like smoke from a fire nobody would ever see again, she kept her eyes locked on the ground that tried to bury her, not in fear, not even anger, but in memory. Because some ground doesn't get to forget what it failed to kill. Could you survive for days in the desert with no food, no water, and no help coming? Would you go back to finish the mission instead of choosing safety and recovery? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story reminded you what real courage looks like, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss stories like this. Share this with someone who needs to remember that survival isn't luck. It's training, determination, and never letting your enemies write the ending. Your next mission is already queued up and ready to watch. I'll see you there.